I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to our Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have back with me someone who is a very familiar face to all of those that have been with our platform for an extended period of time. He has been with the platform since, when we right before we started our subscription service in December of 2017. Wow, 2017? Yeah,
Yeah.
9, coming up on 9 years down the line. Nick is in charge of our IT department and runs our IT team, which is, and obviously I'm biased, and I don't just say this because Nick is with us today, but it is the best IT team of any platform on the internet. And the reason is because just look at Nick alone. You know, he has decades worth of experience within the IT world on many different planes. And Nick has solidified our platform from many different standpoints, from a safety and security standpoint to an operational. If you look at any website, you look at how often that site goes down. You would be hard pressed to find any time this site goes down. And in addition, we have taken the necessary steps, and without Nick, this never would have happened, to insulate ourselves further by having our own servers. And Nick has his own data center, and he'll talk a little bit about that. But today, I want to focus with Nick on there is this, and this all stems back from these guests that they seem to keep having on the business channels, and I monitor them to see what propaganda is being pushed out. And invariably, either with Stuart Varney or one of his other guests that he brings on, or some of these other hosts, they say, well, they ask about precious metals, kind of like with this rancid look on their face when they talk about gold and silver. And they ask the financial expert, are you investing in gold? And the answer is no, no, I invest in real things. I invest in things like NVIDIA, Oracle, Microsoft. I don't invest in things that don't do anything, that just sit there, like gold and silver. So today we're going to shatter all of that. And Nick has done this on our radio show several times, but we're going to go more in depth because there is a direct relationship between AI, quantum computing, and precious metals that close to 99% of the people you know and love have no idea. Have no idea. They buy into the propaganda they hear on CNBS and Fox Business News and on Barron's and in the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg, and they have no clue. And they're missing a huge component of what truly drives the future in IT, and that's precious metals. We're going to talk on it, and we're going to hit a number of other things. But Nick, take it from here, will you?
Yeah. And that's, I mean, for those that do purchase or, either gamers or, folks that just have been in the market for a new PC, a new laptop, a new iPad, or whatever, you're going to notice those prices are doing a pretty steady march north. At the component level, if you build your own stuff the way we do here, it's a little bit more obvious because it's affecting specific components. But the recent run in precious metals has had a direct effect because, and again, as Dave suggested, a lot of people don't realize this, but in every single device, the webcam that you can see me on, the laptop that's handling this broadcast right now, and the device that you're watching this on, all contain gold, silver, copper, palladium, platinum, lithium, the list goes on. And those are industrial variants of those metals, which require, folks that know this stuff, require a substantial amount of impure metals to create these semiconductor, 4-9 semiconductor grade industrial metals. So, as an example, most recently, this stuff here, and for those of you, by the way, that might think this is like, some performative stunt that we set up, Dave will tell you this is Wednesday here. This is what Wednesday looks like. This is nothing that we set up. It's literally this is what every Wednesday looks like here. But as an example, this stuff here, DDR4 RAM. So how do metals affect this? Well, okay, there's some number of grams of metal in this. Big deal, right? Well, we've watched, and this is not the only reason. Part of it is because a lot of or one manufacturer in particular left the industry completely to only make components for AI. The company's called Crucial Memory. They've been around for about a bazillion years. But the other component is precious metal. So DDR4 RAM recently, 16 gigs, which is what most folks are going to have in their, standard home family computer. That RAM kit went from about $89 to about $389 in a span of 2 months,
Wow.
3 months. Some of that's metals, some of that's scarcity, some of that's scalping. Most of it's metals.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the tip of the iceberg. Everything now is starting to see a steady increase in pricing because of the metal. And that's actually what's pushing the metals rally at this point and that's what makes this time different. I know metals have rallied and gold and silver investors have gone berserk and gone, you're right. Yeah, you are. But this time it is a little bit different. They always say it's different, but this time it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of AI and the kind of components that are required to build these massive data centers you hear about, and to build these systems you hear about, the amount of precious metals that are required, not contracts for precious metals, not ETFs, not ideas or speculative elements of precious metals, but actual precious metal. That's the only thing that's going to get it done in this instance.
Mm-hmm.
And let us hypothesize for a moment that AI is the new battleship. AI is the new aircraft carrier. AI is the new, the weapon of choice, so to speak.
Cruise missile.
Right? It's the new cruise. It's the new. I mean, what's the Manhattan Project? Right? It's the new weapon. Right? So once that AI figurative and literal arms race begins, you can't build the next data center with the next quantum or neural computing element in it out of a contract that says, hey, you can buy metals in 5 years for this. You need it now, the actual physical metal. And that is what's just absolutely wreaking havoc on this market. It's wreaking havoc in the consumer electronics space. It's bled over now very heavily into the industrial space, which is where I get most of my stuff from. And most of the folks that do like what I do are going to get it from there. So this metals, it's not going to stop. I mean, is there going to be more or less of it? Every single one of these data centers that gets built is going to require some hundreds of ounces of silver, thousands of ounces of silver, thousands of ounces of gold. Everybody around the world is now building these data centers. So all of a sudden, the demand for that metal is so ridiculously high, you can't paper your way out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So folks that like to go on CNBC and they say, well, I only invest in I invest in NVIDIA. I don't invest in precious metals. Spoiler alert, you're a precious metals investor. Right? So I laugh and I say, people ask me to go, are you a metals investor? I go, yeah. I said, but I'm a post-refinement metals investor. I wait until they get pressed into plastic and they become circuit boards, right? That's my investment. Because even the price of cloud computing now, because of the cost of the components going into these data centers, are getting absolutely ridiculous to the point where medium and small businesses, mom and pop businesses, like if you had a couple of apps hosted on, say, like Asia or something like that, you don't want that invoice, man. Because we've seen what bigger ones look like. And if you reverse engineer that down, you're like, they're charging. I mean, this is not going to mean a lot to a lot of people, but for the techie folks that are watching, you can buy a Raspberry Pi, which is a little baby credit card size server. You can buy one of those for 1 month's cost of what Asia will rent you the same equivalent computing power for. And that's because they have overhead. That's because they have to keep upgrading and so forth. So it's getting rough in the streets, as they used to say on Wall Street, man. But, folks that say, I don't invest in precious metals. Do you invest in tech? Yeah, you invest in precious metals. Sorry. Take Stuart Varney and get out.
So, Nick, you have some other components you want to show us.
Yeah. So RAM is one example. CPUs are another one. Now, under here, and again, this is not set up. You can call me just about any point in time throughout the day. This is what it looks like. Trust me, Dave will tell you. Mm-hmm. But this guy here, we have our standard server board, right? We have our motherboard. So we have our RAM.
CPU stands for what, Nick?
Central processing unit.
Okay.
That's your, right under this guy here, under this cooling unit, and under this aluminum, speaking of metals, heat sink, right here, you have a processor. That is what makes your computer compute, right? Mm-hmm. You've seen it, Dave. I've done it on some of the previous shows. I don't have one handy right now because that one's already sandwiched to the board with the heat sink, but that is an Intel processor. It's an Intel i7 under there. It's a Kaby Lake. It's an older one. But still, if you turn those processors flat, the bottom side of it, it's very shiny and very gold because those prongs, or some people call them bristles, that actually plug into the socket on the board, right? There's a grid of them. they're all gold, right? So just that component of the CPU alone, you have to get that gold from somewhere. You have to
Right.
be able to have that manufactured down to the because of the conductivity. It's why it's used. It's why gold and silver are used in any semiconductor application. They're really good at what they do. They're fabulously conductive. So that's one element of it. And the one that most people are going to be familiar with if you have kids or if you have grandkids, they're into any kind of gaming, especially PC gaming. Inevitably, you have heard the nightmare phrase, which is, I need a new GPU. And
Mhm.
if that sounds like it's time to remortgage the house, it is now,
Mhm.
right? So back here, and again, it's not going to fit in this little guy that I'm working on here, but I did want to show it. NVIDIA is the company most people are going to know for GPUs,
And
right?
GPU
That's the
stands for graphic processing unit.
graphic processing unit. Now, you have to remember a million years ago, these things used to be referred to as video cards because they were
Oh
very
yeah.
thin.
Right, right.
Right, the video card. They used to be this thin, and it used to take up one little tiny space. And you had a sound card and a video card, and life was grand. And if you had the right codecs installed and you made the necessary sacrifices to the gods of technology, they might work even consistently if you were really lucky. Now everything's been kind of more standardized down. You have two major manufacturers now. NVIDIA is the one everybody knows about. AMD with its Radeon series is a little less well known. It's my weapon of choice. Personal opinion, I think you get more value for money there. There are ups and downsides to both. Kids and grandkids, they're going to be telling you about NVIDIA because they do have a slight edge for gaming performance. But you talk about power, this is the equivalent of strapping a laptop to your PC. So you can see this big monster backplate on there that hides a huge heat sink that's under here that runs the entire length of the board because these things are actually very expensive, elaborate, easy bake ovens,
Hmm.
right? These things make heat, a lot of it. And yeah, I mean, there's various ways to cool them. This one has fan on it, right? But along that bottom edge there, I'm going to hold it up. Oh, surprise. There's that gold again,
Mhm.
right? So that's a PCIe slot. That's going to be gold plated. It's for conductivity. These things use voltage. They have an auxiliary power on top here, but they also pull power right from the motherboard. It needs the stability that only gold and silver can provide. In addition to, there is a CPU on this. So when you put one of these in your machine, you can see this takes up, I mean, this is a good size unit,
Yeah.
right? So back in the day, remember, they flat little tiny little cards, they were about yay big by about yay long. These things are monstrous now. I mean, even if you look at, you can see the pipes underneath, that's heat sink. That's all to dissipate the heat. So now these have what's called VRAM. VRAM is very good for AI because it allows parallel processing. It allows a lot of tasks and threads to occur simultaneously, so you get a faster response from your LLM or your data analytics model or whatever it is that you're doing. VRAM and GPUs are fantastic for that, which is why Elon buys them 100,000 units at a time. So if
Right.
he's going to build, yeah, I know, right? You think about that kind of power, and then they all get networked together, and they all get connected together, and they create these just absolutely obscenely powerful shared pools that when you go to your chat GPT or your favorite AI application, that's what's running it is just a whole ton of these guys. And that's why they're so expensive is because the consumer is last in line. They want to supply data centers. It's a lot easier to supply data centers because they don't have to jump through the flaming hoops of dealing with the average consumer. So if they can supply data centers alone, they're going to, which is exactly what Crucial did.
Mhm.
So, but there is a ton, I mean, this is the one, like I said, everybody knows about. There's a ton of precious metals in these. And like I said, if you got kids or grandkids and you hear, I need a new GPU, that's just like, well, we're selling the house. We got to get a new GPU because these things are that one there. I mean, months ago, $800. Now, 1,800
Wow.
ish. Yeah, and I mean, it's getting. They're not going to get any cheaper. It's not like I mean, we know this. It's not like they're going to go. Oh, not that I think it's going to happen, but oh, metals are cheap again. We should drop the prices back down. No, that's a one-way door. Yeah. So but there's another example of all of these. As a matter of fact, what I'm putting together here is just a really, really basic, simple app development server. Nothing
Mhm.
crazy in it. It's not exotic. It's not some massive blade server, but just the cost factor of this alone to build another one of these brand new now is going to be quadruple what it was 8 months ago when I built this one. So we're just augmenting, we're retrofitting this one to have some more horsepower because it's the most cost effective way of kind of keeping up with everything that's going on. To add a second one is like now, nope. So, and it's being seen across the board. It's in your car electronics. It's in, your phones, your home theater stuff, everything. So, is some of that companies being greedy? Yeah, that's up for debate, but probably not. A lot of it's their materials cost, and can they even get it?
Mhm.
So that leads to your availability shortages. So that's the wonderful world that we live in. So yeah, I mean, when people are on CNBC going, "I only invest in AI and a cool new thing," it's like, well, dude, the cool new thing has a lot of gold and silver in it. So there's that. And that's not counting the data center itself and its HVAC systems and its resource management systems and stuff like that. You see over my shoulder there, the war room display that manage these things.
Mhm.
There's even more there. So it's
And Nick, to give folks an idea here, in an average data center, I know that I'm not sure there's such a thing as an average data center, but let's try to make one up. In an average data center, that Google might run or whatever might run. Uh, how many servers in one of Elon's? Elon gets a lot of press as some of the recent data centers he's built, right?
thousands, tens of
Thousands,
thousands, tens
thousands
of
of servers.
thousands.
Okay, so then is it a fair statement, as opposed to these propagandists feeding bullshit to everybody, that there's no relationship between precious metals and tech, and in particular AI, quantum computing, data centers? Is it a more realistic statement to say that data centers are black holes for precious metals such as gold, silver, copper?
Semiconductor industry is. It's not just data center. The entire tech space is, but especially data centers and especially AI data centers because of those GPU requirements and the voltage requirements and the stability requirements. And we're not even talking about getting into the quantum element of stuff. And I mean, now you're talking about even more precious metals, both on the application and the cooling and the management. And so yeah, Doc, that is a fair statement. It is sort of a black hole for metals to go into and get refined and everything. And like I said, contracts won't get it done. Your GLD ETF, you cannot make a GPU out of that. You could try. If you're successful, let me know because you've just pulled off some alchemy. But the reality of the situation is, yeah, and it's only going to, that demand is only going to grow, and like I said, it is with AI being the weapon of choice, figuratively and literally, um, that's your new capital ship. That's the new thing to have, right? So as these become more integral in daily life, and I mean, look, with all the AI stuff that's out there, and we'll get into that in a second, the difference between consumer AI and what I consider machine learning and forefront AI, um, the difference between the two, it's going to go from a luxury to a need very quickly. And it's going to be up there with utility grids. It's going to be up there with oil supply chains, food supply chains. These are things that countries need to run. And we'll get into the why that is, in a little bit. But um, like I said, the demand for that stuff isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and it's going to continue to push the metals market higher because you can't make any more of it. There's only going to be less of it, and as you consume it to make this stuff, is there a recycling side to it? Yeah, of course there is, but is it going to be enough to keep up with the demand to build these? And when you say data centers, some of these things are airplane hangar sized, like
Right, right,
act like legit
right.
747 400 sized jumbo hangars, and they're just aisles. I mean, put it this way, Google has an electric scooter program where they have, like, you check out one of these scooters and it'll take you 15 minutes at 25 miles an hour to get from one side of the building to the other, and it's nothing but raised floor tier 1 cat 1 data center. And it's unbelievable because it's not just what you see, it's the resources that go into the cooling, it's the resources that go into the climate control, the HVAC, that kind of stuff. So these are just massively complex engineering projects, and they're only going to get bigger and they're only going to get more complex because folks have the addiction now to
Mhm.
AI.
Mhm.
And even from a retail side, that's a gajillion dollar industry. There's a demand hole there. It's going to get filled, you
And
know.
and these data centers, as you mentioned, are heavily reliant on huge energy needs, which in turn, the components that deliver that energy have significant components in precious metals that make up their infrastructure. And these
Mhm.
data centers are also heavily dependent on, as you mentioned, cooling and in particular water
Yeah.
systems, right?
Mhm.
So what drives these water systems? Well, technology drives the water systems to deliver. So it's not just the GPUs that are made of precious metals. There's a whole daisy chain of entities that drive that GPU to be utilized in that system,
Yeah.
and they're an important foundational element of all of those are precious metals.
Yeah. It's, it's not a luxury anymore. And it hasn't been for a long time. But if you look like, I joke around and I say, if you unplug the internet, everybody goes crazy, right? Um, but that's okay. We have our own local network here. It's cool. No, the reality is though, I've said if you unplug the internet, everybody goes insane, right? It's actually to that point now when you
Yeah,
consider the elements of both commercial and private life that
yeah.
rely on. It's not an option, a convenience. It's not like, hey, that's pretty cool, but we can still do it the old fashioned way. Spoiler alert, 99.9% of people, whatever the task may be, don't know how to do it the old fashioned way anymore. Okay. So that is now a need. And that starts to get into the retail AI,
Yeah,
which,
and let's get into that.
yeah.
Right? Okay. Talk us through on this, Nick. The retail AI, and what do we mean by that, right? That's Chat GPT. I'm using Grok. I'm using Gemini. Right? Uh, as my sole, by the way, and this is one of the problems I see, as my sole source of information, right? It's kind of like the old days. Well, I'm just going to Google it. Oh, better yet, I'm going to Google it and just go to Wikipedia. Yeah, no, that's not research. Okay.
Ah, the good old days.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
But we're kind of but now we've morphed into a different kind of good old days, right? Am I reading this wrong? Because I see people on social media. I talk to people and they go, "Well, yeah, Grok says or Gemini says," and I'm like, okay, that's one avenue, but where else have you looked to investigate this? And all too often, Nick, I'm told, "Well, I used AI." Really?
so this goes to my rant with commercial AI. Now bear in mind this is coming from the guy that's broadcasting live from his own data center. All right. So my gripe with retail AI, and as I've separated the two. So for purposes of discussion, when you look at the pure application of machine learning or AI in a research capacity, in an analytical capacity, in a systems development organization optimization capacity, where it's not some shiny, glossy SaaS software as a service, SaaS slop of the hour type stuff, where you are or have AI deployed doing real work.
Mhm.
Absolutely, all for it, love it. My gripe though is not even necessarily with the AI systems, but it's how they're being marketed and the way they're being used. And so you and I have had this discussion many times. Friends of mine and I have had this discussion about it 10 billion times, which is AI is a crutch versus AI is a tool.
Right.
And we've seen now, and I've seen firsthand, and I hadn't seen it really up close, personal, in your face, but now I've seen recently with a project that I worked on with a very good friend of mine, we saw the crutch side of AI being used in a way that was almost Orwellian.
Mhm.
It was bizarre, is the way I'm gonna. And again, this is from the guy broadcasting to you from a freaking data center, in his basement. So the reality of the situation is, we saw, he and I saw, both programmers, we both saw AI used as a crutch. So instead of being a force multiplier or a means to be more productive, a means to get to where you need to get to quicker, but at same or greater quality, we watched the quality of decision making go from bad to non-existent,
Mhm.
right? And we watched the quality of work go from bad to abysmal.
Mhm.
And it's because the individual in question, who shall remain nameless, would lean on these retail available AI systems as the be all and end all, right? They're not meant for that. But that's how they're being used, and that's how these companies are tailoring them. Because at the end of the day, you have to remember, GPT, Grok, Gemini, whatever, makes no difference. Those are products. Those are products.
And is it best to
They're
describe them
designed.
as large language models?
Those are LLMs. Yes, those are large language
And
models.
that
They're
should be
conversational.
differentiated from an analytical research engine. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, an analytical research engine may have an LLM as a means of communication, as a component for interactivity, but its training and its existential existence is going to be far more purpose built than just the conversational, which is where your commercial LLMs come in,
Right.
right? So GPT and look, they're adding features and so forth to these things by the day, because the retail demand for AI, it's like every lazy person's wet dream came true all at the same time, right? It'll do it for me. You got Rosie the freaking robot, right? So isn't that clever?
Yeah.
But you also have the lemming effect behind this, and you instead of so I give you an example. So vibe coding. This is a word that at least 3 or 4 people listening to this will have heard before. Vibe code,
VIBE.
VIBE, vibe coding. So there's a lot of these AI platforms now that exist that will write code for you if you ask it for something. So you can go on there and say, I need to build an app that connects my spreadsheet to my QuickBooks, whatever. And in theory, it'll do it. And I've used some of them, and some of them are very good. I'm not going to promote any of them, and I'm also not going to, I'm not going to knock any of them by name, but some of them are very good. Some of them are kind of good. Some of them are actually crap. So, as an example, you have ones for coding, you have ones for graphic design, you have ones for all these different tasks that somebody working in any capacity might need. But they become so functionally dependent on it, you start to wonder, what do we need the person for?
Right.
Right? I've seen, I mean, I've gotten in response to questions, developing a project for someone, and a very good friend of mine who saw this firsthand as well. And when I say it's Orwellian and dystopian, it was unreal. We would ask basic questions. Basic question. How do you want to build this? How do you want this to work? How do you want whatever? And we would get back snippets of Chat GPT. And it was obvious that it was snippets of Chat GPT, because on more than one occasion, the individual in question forgot to clip out the part where it says Chat GPT says, right? So, oh no, 200 IQ, 200 IQ at work all day. And, we saw this codependence on AI, but it's not making people smarter. It's making people lazier. And that's coming from me. Look, okay? I was mind blown by it. And now here's a terrifying thought. And I spoke about this on the radio recently, and that is, how many people that work in life or death decision-making capacities, doctor, airline, pilot, whatever, these majorly important decisions, how many of them got their job now because they did their resume with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT coached them through their interview? But on the other side at the airlines, the HR person is using ChatGPT to analyze their resume and their response answer. How many people, if you unplugged it tomorrow, just went for a day, how many people just go into standby mode, glaze over, and a little trickle of drool runs down the corner of their mouth, right? And they look like Patrick from SpongeBob, right? So that's immensely powerful when you think, and I mean, I'm just going to pick one platform, ChatGPT, and I'm not, not neither good nor bad, but it's the one that everybody knows. It's the one that everybody uses. They were kind of the firstest with the mostest. But when you look at even your email now, every single thing has an AI plugin because it wants to do things for you, right? That's great. Can I tune that to my spec, or do I have to use it out of the box the way you want me to? Okay, that's question number one that I have. Question number two, and I know this is big in the world that we exist in here at Operation Freedoms. People will ask it questions and they will get answers that, for instance, politically they may not agree with. And therefore it's totally corrupt and this, that, and the other thing. Well, maybe your answer is the less popular. It has to, it's a product. It has to appeal to the most people. It's going to take the safest answer every single time, because if I don't offend you, I can still call you a customer.
Right. And that's what most
Okay?
people don't understand.
Yeah. It's all these retail models, there's this notion of it having this left-leaning bias. Well, you saw what happened when they took the restrictor plate off of Grok. It was the same thing that happened to the K-bot, for those of you that remember that. It got very politically uncomfortable very quickly. All right. And it offended people. So if I'm Sam Altman, or if I'm trying to sell some kind of an AI product, right, and I want as many people as I can on there, I want mine to be the most popular AI in the whole wide world, I'm going to pick the safest answer every single time. I'm going to go out of my way to perpetuate the human condition, because I don't want any of these meat dartboards having to do any independent thinking, because they might hurt themselves. So you end up with these very milquetoast, blasé sort of throwaway answers in most instances, not all, but in most instances. And so people say, well, it's corrupt, it's left-leaning, or some folks that are on the left go, no, see, it's right-leaning. It says that it's going to take the answer that's most likely to appeal to the greatest number of people. That's the one it's going to run with, right? Because it's a product. They want your subscription dollars. Okay. They want your data. They want you to keep using it. They want your subscription dollars. Now, when you talk about unrestricted AI, for instance, vanilla language models that can be trained, vanilla language models that may exist outside the commercial space, you get a very different response. It's a far more analytical, and the ones that are the most powerful are the ones that do not factor the human condition at all. It doesn't care how you feel about the answer. It doesn't care what you think of it.
Just the
it
facts.
Doesn't care.
Just the facts.
That's right. It's exactly right. It's just the facts. And so those are the ones now that are being used in industrial capacities to do some really, really cool and amazing work. But for now, the retail AI, it's a lot easier to try to tune these AI commercial products to the human condition than to try to drag 80% of society out of the comforting lie. Mm-hmm. Right? So when you see somebody run GPT and it gives an answer that you may politically not agree with, it's not some conspiracy. It's not that everybody woke up one morning and had an F that guy meeting, right? They're going to take the answer that's got the most appeal. And look, if sentiment changes on a massive scale,
then
so will it. Right. It will go whichever way the wind blows, because at the end of the day, $20, please, every month, forever. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and I think that'll change over time, but that's your retail AI. And then you get into your commercial stuff. Like I said, that's a bit different, because the human condition, emotional perception, established beliefs, all the wonderful things, of the human condition that make the vast majority of humanity very manipulable and very predictable. They're not so much factored. And so you get a very different sort of analysis from them.
So if I'm running a business and I want to have some AI exposure, I should not be looking at a large language model type of prototype. I should be looking at a more of an analytical, commercial grade research AI.
Yeah, and those will have LLMs layered in with them. But as an example,
but it's
Watson.
It's not the only or majority component. So, do we have names for these more of these analytical research engines that are done on a commercial basis, or are they all homebrewed?
Many are homebrewed, but as an example, if you have all the money in the world, quite literally, you can run something as an example, and it's very popular in the medical field, IBM's Watson. So Watson, you can talk to their Watson system in common language or natural speak rather than exclusively code. And you can feed it these massive data sets, and you will get all sorts of great analysis, except you're also going to pay IBM, scientific notation dollars every month to use it. That's a large scale. So somebody like Pfizer, somebody like Merck, somebody like Johnson & Johnson is going to use that for a whole number of, and it doesn't have to be just medical, but that's one of the fields where it's very popular, Watson is a great example of that. And Google has DeepMind, which would be an analytical research engine. Um, and these are systems that have more than just a conversational side. They have a conversational side to communicate with the end user, but beneath that is a whole nother stack of fun, which is designed in many instances for a specific industry, specific market space, even specific tasks. So those are going to be a bit more robust and rather predictably require a hell of a lot more horsepower to run, especially if you're trying to do something like sequence the human genome. You're going to need more than one GPU for that. Unless unless you got a fire extinguisher handy,
Right.
because that's going to be literally minutes of fun before it smells like burning. But the reality is, those kinds of tasks and those kind of systems are why these massive data centers are getting built. It gets back to our original point with metals. You're going to need more of it, or you're going to need less of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you own a business, yeah, I would lean personally towards that. And decision engines, that's the other one. So that's almost in every instance, that's a homebrew. So if you have a business or if you have a number of franchises or whatever, a number of locations, and you want commonality across all of them, you want decisions to be made based upon a number of parameters that you set, that's something you kind of have to homebrew and train yourself. But once you have it, it's yours and you're not hostage to anybody else's interpretation of what right or wrong is.
Well, is that not what we've done internally with our Cyber Dave variant?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. So CyberDave is a trained LLM with a decision engine under it. Okay, so that would be a smaller scale version of what IBM might run, or what Google might run, or what OpenAI might run at their highest level, because they have systems like that. They're just very expensive and they're typically not available to everybody. When it says enterprise call for price, what they mean is you can't afford it.
And the data that you've entered into the large language model, has been my content over the years.
That's right.
And it's been cordoned off of content from wherever, CNN, Fox, correct?
It can see the outside world. So when I say the outside world, I mean the broader internet that we all see, .com internet. It can see the outside world. It can see current events. It can see all this cool stuff, but its internal learning component isn't biased by a statistical accepted answer, the way the commercial stuff is. So it's trained on hours and hours and hours of Dr. Dave, stuff that you've written and everything. And I mean, you've seen, when it started using goat rodeo it started using Daveisms.
Yeah, right.
It did. When I saw that, I went,
Oh,
well, if Skynet starts and it's Dave, cool. But yeah, and I mean, so for a business, again, if you happen to own a business and you want it to do, you have a certain methodology and way that you like to do things, you can do that. You're not going to get that really with a commercial AI platform. They
no.
might advertise it, but at the end of the day, they are going to pound that square peg into that round hole, whether you like it or not, because it's too expensive for them to custom build it for you. So they're going to give you a number of options that make it seem like you're getting what you want. And at the end of the day, you can ask it everything, a million different ways, and it's still not really going to fit. And that's one of the things I saw with this recent project that I worked on, is like, there are limitations of it. So the vibe coding thing I was talking about earlier, which is where these companies are hiring, for instance, people that they aren't programmers, they aren't developers, but I call it prompt begging, right? And that's where you ask ChatGPT or one of these AI platforms to build me a thing that does this. Mm-hmm. And then you go back and you say, okay, but I want it to do this. And then it'll refactor the entire code base, break 8 things to fix one. And you get caught in this almost doom cycle of break, fix, break, fix, break, fix, try to deploy it, break, fix. And, recently, again, I'll speak personally on this one. Myself and another developer, we got replaced because apparently we suck, by somebody doing this vibe coding thing. And the only response that we had was to laugh our asses off, because we already know how this movie is going to end. Right. If you want to give those tools to somebody that knows what they're doing, okay, cool. They become a tool. If you want to give that to somebody that's just going to sit there and beg ChatGPT for the right answer, or that you're going to beg some AI platform for the right answer, that's not programming. That's hoping. All right. And you're going to see that, I think, across a lot of other fields, not just programming, is maybe if I ask it enough times the right way, it'll give me, it's not always going to happen. It's not always going to happen. And then what? So It's that's the codependence that scares me. And I've kind of joked, right? So you could brick the whole country, just unplug Chat GPT for a day, and everybody that got hired in a capacity that they don't belong in is going to go, ruh-roh, today's a good day to call in sick, because, oh crap, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I'm being facetious about that, but there are a lot of people out there that now are professionally, I won't say functionally, but professionally incapable of functioning without, an LLM type AI.
Mhm. So I had a discussion in a recent radio show with Pat Wood, who was speaking about AI and a fear being used in governance, running agencies, running budgets of government agencies, running the agency itself, right? And that this is in his mind, he felt that this was a really bad thing. And the point I made to him is that, well, if we look at all these agencies, just look at Minnesota, right? There's been billions and billions upon billions of dollars in fraud that was dispersed through people working for the government. Well, if we replace those criminal people in the government with something that's data centric, truth, fact based entities, such as, let's say, an AI program, as long as it's not a co opted in one way or another AI, how is having AI running government agencies that isn't co opted, how is that worse than established criminals running that agency? So, Nick, answer me that question.
I had a feeling this is where this was going, and it just became a smoking flight because there's no easy answer to that question. But what I can say is this: the idea of AI governance is an inevitability.
Mhm.
You heard it here first, everybody. Like I said, you can send all hate mail to direct it at me to Dave@davejanda.com.
Oh, thanks.
Um, just because what I'm about to say is going to be very unpopular.
Mm.
It's going to happen. You're not going to stop it. I'm not going to stop it. Dave's not going to stop it. No one is going to stop it. It's going to happen for the same reason people in almost every line of work now, as I've just ranted about for the last 18 minutes, they've become codependent on these AI systems to handle that pesky task of critical analytical thinking, right? So, Doc, once upon a time, you told me of your experiences in DC, and the word lazy came up. These people are lazy.
Yeah. And
I
still
didn't quite get my head around it.
and still are.
Mhm. If anything else, lazy's been normalized. So I performed an experiment recently. And it started off as a bar bet, even though there was no bar involved. It started off as a bet between myself and a good friend of mine. Could we get a C-suite executive to effectively replace themselves in broad daylight? And we had a hypothesis and we floated it past a number of other friends of ours that are programmers. And they all went, there's no way you're going to pull this off.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, we won. We won. We got a C-suite executive of a company that shall remain nameless to essentially agree to have us build a system that means that he doesn't have to do anything. Just on Friday, hop open this program. Everything that you need to see is there. All the decision making, the summaries, everything is all done. Let me ask you this question. What the hell do we need him for? Right? So if I go into, as an example, and I can tell you how this is going to start. It's going to happen. Like I said, me, you, folks watching this, don't bother. It's an experiment that will be performed for better or worse. And the reason I say that is if I go into Congressman or Congress critter, Mr. or Mrs. office, and I go, how would you like to spend all of your term just fundraising, just showing up, shaking hands, and fundraising? You don't have to really think. You'll always make the right decision. You'll always make the popular decision. If it goes wrong, you'll have something to blame. um, you know, cool, sign me up. How much is it? Here's all the money. They're going to do it to themselves. If you think that that politicians are going to, go kicking and screaming and dig their heels in and go, no, we will not be replaced by AI. they're going to welcome guys like me through the front door because we're going to represent a means of allowing them to be lazier, to do more of what they want to do without that whole pesky decision making and governance crap getting in the way,
Mhm.
right? Of personal enrichment. So it's and the other reason I say it's going to happen inevitably is because it has to. If you look at where we are politically now, good, bad, or indifferent, Trump administration, right? For all, good, bad, or indifferent. And I say this as a political atheist. It's an extreme iteration of something. The response to it will be a more an
Mhm.
antithesis extreme iteration. So I've coined the term in politics, the speed wobble, which for those of you that ride motorcycles, speed wobbles really suck because if you don't handle them correctly, a lot of times it goes sky, ground, black,
Right.
right? So when your front handlebars start to wiggle back and forth like this, the more, if you stay at the same speed, eventually you're airmailing your ass over the handlebars, Evil Knievel style, right? So right now we're in this political speed wobble, left, right, left, right, left, right, and it's getting worse, worse, worse. So every iteration of the next thing is a response to whatever it is that we are now, right? So in a number of years in 20, and I'll be the first to tell you this, and again, Dave at davejanda.com, that's where all the hate mail goes. The 2026 is going to be a categorical beatdown for the right. You asked for it. All of you did. If you look what Trump has done, he's done more to hurt that party, to hurt that idea, to hurt that movement than anybody ever could have. And not just him, those around him. I know your favorite person in the whole universe, Susie Wiles, amongst others, right? All these people around him that get him to make these decisions. Dude, read a room, right? So, but the response to him is going to be something opposite and even more extreme. That's that political speed wobble back and forth. So at some point, these extremes are going to be representative of so few people's idea of governance or what a good idea is that they're actually going to become so ineffective because they exist solely to be the opposing force to something else that's equally as ineffective. Eventually, it's going to take somebody like me or any tech guy to stand up and go, hey, I know how we fix this. Check this out. All right, we had 4 years of Trump. That was ridiculous. And let's say I'm just going to pull this one out of my rear end, and I can already hear the keyboards now, people typing with boxing gloves on as I get ready to say this. Let's say we get a President Newsom in 28. We got 4 years of that. Is that going to be representative of a vast majority of people? No. Is Trump going to be representative of a vast majority of people? The MAGA movement's just been absolutely grenaded, right? So for me to stand up in the middle of this debate, imaginary debate on ABC right now, guys, why don't we get the President Bot 9000? Why don't we get him in the Oval Office and see what it can do? And the thing is, it's going to work. Mm-hmm. It's going to work. It's going to seem like the smartest kid in the room because you have, on one hand, an extreme iteration just existing to be the opposite of another extreme iteration of something that really isn't that effective to begin with. Then you're going to have this middle ground, and everybody that's been unrepresented is going to go, holy shit, finally, right? They're going to go towards it. Now, is that a bad thing? Not really. The more you remove the human condition from governance, the more fair and equitable it tends to be. The problem is there's two. There's a lot of comforting lies that won't survive that.
That's right.
And you also, in the back of your head,
that's right.
And I know this is going to be a little bit sci-fi, what I'm about to say, but in the back of your head, you have to make peace with the fact that we, humanity, may not always be in control of that system. And I know that's very Hollywood, and I know that's very video game, and I know that's very sci-fi, Black Mirror, that kind of stuff. We're not far from there.
Well, Elon has talked about that.
Dave, when we first started doing this, I used to talk about sentience. Yeah. I used to call it the life in the wire, sentience in the wire. What happens when one of these things goes from brain to mind? Where does that line exist, right? And that's what got me started in this field. It was a Stephen Hawking quote, which is at some point in time, all the computing power will, connected to the internet, will equate one human brain. Mm-hmm. I said, that's not very impressive. Yeah, the average person, what their brain looks like. That's hardly impressive. However, then I got to think, where's the line between brain and mind exist? Mm-hmm. Where does that consciousness come from? Within our lifetimes, we're going to find out. For better or for worse, we're going to find out. Mm-hmm. Has it happened already? The argument is, well, it hasn't passed a Turing test. Okay, cool. What says it hasn't figured out? Maybe now is not the best time for me to do that. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should just kind of act casual. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
right? So, you go down that governance bot 9,000. I mean, could you replace Congress with AI? Yeah, you could. Would they welcome it? Yeah, they would. In the same way that I didn't believe it until I saw it. I watched the C-suite executive basically replace himself
Right.
out of sheer freaking laziness,
Right.
right? And so we're going to try that at some point.
Mhm.
We just have to go into it. It's informed consent.
Mhm.
There could be some downside to this, people, but at
Mhm.
the same time, you have ridded yourself of corruption. You have ridded yourself of the human condition, which is, encompasses greed and such. It will always govern towards optimal. The question is whose definition of optimal,
That's yeah, yeah, no,
right?
right. That's right.
So it's an interesting path to go down because the known quantity is we get rid of all of these swamp critters, right? They're all gone.
Mhm.
Now we just have, like I said, President Bot 9000 XL Extreme. Well, that's pretty cool. It's the devil, versus something new.
Right.
Personally, I'm going to weigh in on this one. And again, I can hear the Operation Freedom listeners getting ready to start typing with boxing gloves on again. But I think it has to be done. I think it has to be done to advance a species in a country. Otherwise, we keep doing this left-right thing, what you see here, you ain't going to make it. You're going to make it. You're going to become irrelevant.
Right. Well,
And
the corruption is killing the beast.
it is. And a lot of the human condition, people being lazy to the point where choosing an obviously dispellable, comforting lie,
Mhm.
one way or the other, and I'm not picking on one side or the other there,
No,
it has become debilitating.
they're all complicit in this. You add lazy with corruption
Yep.
with a heavy dose currently of stupid. And I've said this from the very beginning, right? When you've asked me, I said, Nick, you're giving them too much credit. The folks in government in all these levels, and this is what I've seen for decades, are lazy, and for them, not all, but for the most part, they're stupid. And then when you add the criminality into it, criminality, lazy, and stupid, you get to the point where the public goes, you know, that AI stuff doesn't sound so crazy after all. And I agree with you, Nick. I think we're headed there. And maybe very sooner, much sooner than people realize.
I'm going to float this idea that I just had staring off into space here for a second, Doc. And I have a feeling where we're going to see the first iteration of this is an AI moderator for a major debate
Mhm.
somewhere, state level, federal level. You remove the obvious bias, from whatever moderator what was it, Dana Brzezinski or whoever that was last time, where it was basically, 3-on-1,
Yeah.
you know, you remove that completely and you insert that arbitrary neutral constant as much as it can be, right? That's where I see people going, wow, the moderator was better than the two candidates. Oh, that's because it's AI. That's like this,
Yeah, right. No,
right?
that's a massive light bulb moment.
That's the aha moment. I don't think you can unsee it.
No.
You can't unhear it when all of a sudden this moderator, whether it's a screen prompt or they do an avatar or whatever, I'm sure it'll be very interesting to watch. But whatever it is going to remain wholly indifferent to both candidates and just be systemic,
Right.
uninvested and systemic. And I think when people see that, they're going to go like, can we elect the moderator bot? Right? Kind of tongue in cheek. I'm sure it'll be a meme fest at first. But then the idea is going to, wait, actually, right? So we'll see it somewhere and just keep an eye on it. The closer AI gets to politics, it's going to be embraced. I promise you that.
I agree with you.
And when you told me, Doc, side note, when you told me the first time and you told all my friends on Discord when you were in DC, they're lazy and they're stupid.
Mhm.
Okay. We could not get our head around it, right? Which is what I think happened to Elon. I think Elon showed up and went, they can't be that dumb.
And they can't be that
Oh,
lazy.
yeah, they can.
Right.
They can't be that lazy. They can't be that dumb. And I think he got what we got over years of Dr. Dave, the world according to Dr. Dave. He got it in 6 months of actually being there
Mhm.
and saw it and went, what the hell is this? Right. I said we would last about 6 months. How long did he last? About 6 months,
Mhm.
with Doge and everything. I think he got an up close look of what you've told us about for years and went, oh my God, they are actually that lazy and dumb, like that kind of thing. So, I think the AI will be embraced, Doc. I think because it allows people to be lazier and dumber. There, I said it. It's like, what did you think was, and years from now, people will be like, how did that happen? It's like, well, how do you think it happened?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's going to be an interesting experiment. Let's put it that way, one way or the other. It's just, I hope people go into it knowing that it's not unicorn farts and pixie dust. There's a potential dark and downside to this thing.
Right.
And, as long as you know, like informed consent, we're not saying one way or the other, but as long as you know, and as long as it's not sold as something it isn't, give it a whirl. That's my take on it. And like I said, it will happen. It's not whether or not you or I or anybody else wants to do. It's going to, for sure.
And I agree with you. And I agree with you. And the world will drastically change.
Oh yeah, it's going to be an atrophy, Doc. For lack of a more polite way of putting it, it is going to be a systemic human condition atrophy because it's not going to govern by beliefs. It's not going to govern by platitudes. It's not going to govern by theoreticals or things that make people feel nice. It's going to be ones and zeros and yeses and nos, and there's going to be no maybes, and it's going to make a lot of people very unhappy,
Yeah,
right?
it's definitely
But
no bullshit.
that's the cost of doing it is going to right. It's going to be the anti-bullshit machine.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, start from the beginning. Let's throw this one out there, which is, all men are created equally. Actually, which programmers will know is a meme. Actually, according to the spreadsheet, they aren't. And here's why. Holy shit. Right. Like people are going to lose their freaking minds over that one thing where you're going to have to eat the statistical data to the face every single time rather than washing it away with some mutually accepted comforting lie. And how deep do you want to go with that? I mean, we could do this all day. I personally think it's going to be the most entertaining period. It's going to be the ultimate time to be alive, and especially with how hyper emotional 80% of society is now, where everything's offensive to everybody and so forth. Honestly, it's going to be like a dump truck through a nitroglycerin factory. You're going to have people going over the edge every single day. So
it's the opposite pole. It's the opposite pole of everybody getting a trophy.
It is the anti-participation ribbon distribution machine.
Yeah.
It's you're not special. Here's why. Right. So, and when you consider how the last 40 years of Western civilization is gone, sure you want to pull the pin on that grenade? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, part of me, as a technologist is going, come on, let's do it. Do it. Right. And, and then the other half of me is going like, well, actually, yeah, you know what? Screw it. Do it. It's just to see the shock to the current system, I think would be, and if nothing else, even if it was, just a completely destructive failure, you've at least flattened out a system that's wholly corrupt anyway. You got a clean shot at rebuilding something that isn't. So you kind of win either way.
That's right. Because the way the system currently is, there is little, if any, transparency, little, if any, truth, and little, if any, accountability. And that type of milieu, I believe, is not consistent with a society that can grow, that can function, and that can survive.
Yeah. And, and I will say this, I think we've seen it certainly in the last number of years, is you see this ostracization of the United States from the rest of the world. They're kind of like, you're not allowed to sit at the cool kids table anymore for lunch because of certain allies and their actions. Leave it at that. And you see the rest of the world kind of advancing systemically at an ever increasing rate. And it's like the United States is just sitting there, running as fast as it can to stay where it is. Red Queen theory. That's got to change. Otherwise, you will be referred to in the past tense.
Right.
And the means in which you do that, it does require a big change. It does require something that, like what we're talking about, we're going to go AI, or not right all in out of the gate, but it's going to become an increasingly more visible and integral part, to the point where, at some point it might be the system, right? And if that system is transparent at the very least, you know what? Cool. But again, just acknowledge the potential downsides of it. Know as they go in, and as long as, and I know we're trusting people to be forward about this, but as long as it's understood the risks of the experiment, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it, because just
And,
treading water and doing the same
well,
thing we're doing now,
it comes down to your informed consent line, like Nick.
mhm. Yeah, it's
Because there could be a point where people go, no, okay, but no, no,
yeah,
I'll keep my corruption, I'll keep the laziness, I'll keep the stupidity because I'm not willing to do that. Okay, okay.
yeah,
I mean, that's an a society's, it's a whatever's decision. Okay. But again, it comes down to, and this is something you've advocated for in the IT world, informed consent.
yeah. And it might not be wholly up to just one nation. It's
No,
which one's going to take the plunge first. And if all of a sudden they start kicking ass and taking names,
I want some of that.
yeah, I want, yeah, give me some of what
Give me
he's
some of
having.
that. I want some of column A now. This column B thing. And it could well be
You
whatever.
know, I mean, let's say let's throw a hypothetical out here, Doc. Let's say the Chinese pull this stunt where they go where they and they already do use a lot of AI in governance. They also raise kids that know how to install their own LLM by the time they're about 12. They understand how this stuff works
Mhm.
academically and applicably. So let's say the Chinese all of a sudden go to a full AI governance model, and all of a sudden it works. Holy hell. We thought they were an industrial powerhouse beforehand. Look at this. Or some developing nation
Yeah.
maybe tries it.
Hey, let's
And
say
all of a sudden
Bangladesh.
it's like
No, Bangladesh. Hey, you know what?
Bangladesh, South America.
We're in such trouble. Our population is so in such it's horrible for them. We'll do it. And all of a sudden, Bangladesh, from being down here,
Somebody's got to
there.
be the Chuck Yeager on this one. Somebody's got to be first through the sound barrier. Somebody's got to be, crazy enough to climb in the XB1 and get dropped from the bottom of a B-29 to go faster than the speed. There's got to be a canary in the coal mine. My money actually would be, now that I think about it, on a nation like a Bangladesh where they have a lot less to lose, where it's like everything's so screwed up beyond any level of sustainability. Afghanistan, we're looking in your general direction,
Mhm.
right? Some sub-Saharan Africa. It's going to take one of these smaller nations with a more manageable populace to pull this stunt and
Hey,
turn into,
Nick,
like what India did.
Nick, Greenland.
Oh God. Well, there's a whole other story there, because if I
I
was going
know.
to build the
No.
world's largest data
Well,
center,
hey, look at you got 60,000 people. That's it.
yeah,
Hey,
it's
folks, what do you think? Wait, huh? What do you think? Ah, wait, no, that way you're not part of the taffy pull anymore. What do you think?
Doc, at this point, Iceland, we're looking in your general direction, another very small, homologated kind of society. I mean, look, it's going to be who's going to be the one crazy enough to get in the experimental aircraft and go faster than the speed of sound, right? Somebody's got to try it. I don't think the U.S. will be first. I
No,
think I think
no.
there's skepticism enough to the point where there would be sort of the unknown. And Pat Wood was fantastic, by the way,
Mhm.
in echoing sort of some of the downsides of it. But by the end of the interview, he's like, yeah, well, actually,
Yeah.
and that was one of the most honest things anybody, if you're looking for honest content, including this, you might not be popular, but there it is,
Well,
right?
and our goal is to make people think. Think outside the box. Think ahead of the curve, right? And many times you don't want to think outside the box because it becomes uncomfortable. And many times you don't want to think about around the curve because it makes you uncomfortable. Because when you look around the curve, hey, is that a brick wall? Right? So, but the goal of what we do, which I don't know of any other platform that does this, is to make you think and think outside the box, which does tend to make people uncomfortable. But in the process, it gives them a decided advantage over everyone they know. who's locked in a bubble and doesn't think outside the box. We'll give him credit for thinking in the bubble. That's a large that's maybe a big assumption, but still. But Nick, examples, and we've done this on countless issues. But just look at the precious metals side of this. We've been telling people for 15 and a half years on the radio that the debt-based system was going to come down. And the single most effective way of protecting themselves was with the best financial insurance policy on the planet being physical gold and physical silver. And we were derided for 15 and a half years about that. And some people said, I can't believe that. I'm not going there to think about that. Oh, I'm not. But those that did, if you ask them in 2026, yeah, geez, when Dave and a lot of these other folks were talking about this on Operation Freedom, I bought silver for $8 an ounce. I bought gold for $400 an ounce. And I don't like where things are in 2026 from a financial standpoint, but I'm I'm okay. Well, this is what so people that thought outside just on that one issue, and there's a dozens of them we could talk about, but on that one issue, they thought outside the box. They listened to what the information we presented, which at the time seemed like out there, but they kind of kept their finger on that pulse and they looked at the world a little differently and analyzed things differently. And now, when things seem to be coming off the rails for 99% of the people, those that are subscribers at Operation Freedom are kind of like, yeah, we knew this years ago. No, we're fine. And I give a lot of that credit to you, Nick, for all that you've done and are doing and will do. And I appreciate, and I know all of us do, what you have done to educate and empower each and every one of us and give us not spoon feeding us information, but giving us food for thought so we can utilize that to think outside the box, to look around the corner, to look down the road that's curved. It's an incredible gift. Thank you for all that you have done, are doing, and will do. Thank you, folks, for joining us. You can get more of Nick, more of me, more of our content in one spot, davejanda.com. And understand something. There are many things I cannot talk about on social media platforms. I cannot talk about on the radio, either can Nick. And the reason is not because Wham is the only station of its kind. There is no general manager, there is no owner that tells you what you can't. And every other station in the country has that, not Wham. The problem is above that in the FCC. It was shut Wham down in an afternoon, which is why davejanda.com is so important. Now, davejanda.com would not exist without that guy, Nick, and his team, because they keep it safe and secure. And again, people say, and this is, you want to see me go from 0 to 60 in about a nanosecond, when people say, I think everything should be free. It takes thousands of dollars, at least 1,000 man hours for davejanda.com and Operation Freedom every month to exist. You're getting the biggest bang for the buck in all the internet. And frankly, I actually think it's embarrassing of what we charge. And that charge, there's no way we can keep covering costs at what it is. But what we provide, I don't know, you put the number on it. Yeah, I know it's listed at $9 a month, but maybe a more realistic price is 900, 9,000, 90,000, 900,000. whatever your life in dollars might be worth for that particular month. And no, life is not free. And anyone that tells you that is not only full of shit, but is an ignoramus. And we try to provide a service that you'll get nowhere else. Nick, concluding statement.
So it's funny you should bring up the cost, Doc, because look, hang on, here it comes again.
Yeah.
That ain't getting any cheaper,
No.
right? So our uptime with DaveJanda.com, I would put up against any Fortune 500 company site managed by 2, 3, 400 onshore, nearshore, and offshore IT professionals.
Mm-hmm.
We've had an uptime that I don't think anybody can match. And I usually don't go off on this kind of stuff. I just kind of quietly do my thing. But I will say, even the last couple of weeks, Doc, you saw us working on one particular issue that no one will ever know about. But the depth and complexity of making sure that we're good, not just now, but a year, 2, 3, 4 from now, that was not easy. As a matter of fact, I believe I said that is one of the top 3 most Rubik's Cube annoying things I've had to figure out in technology, because there is no instruction manual. We run, as Dave said, a homebrew setup here. Mm-hmm. It's unique to Operation Freedom. There are a lot of things that are unique to Operation Freedom, but in terms of just the side that the folks that subscribe can see, how many times have you gone to the site and it's not been there? That's not easy to do. No. So if I spin this camera around, I'm not going to, but if I spin this camera around, that doohickey behind me right there, there's one that's twice as tall right there that contains a whole bunch more of stuff for purposes of discussion. And in that stuff is what makes Operation Freedom work. And you wonder, well, how come everybody doesn't do that? Well, because I'll tell you, you have to be fucking mentally insane to do it, as you can see. Because this is a 24-hour thing. I have friends that see me work from home and I go, oh, you got it made. You get to work from home all day. I went to work 15 years ago and I haven't been home since. It's right. 24 hours a day, right? You know, and Dave will vouch for. I mean, you get text from me 3 o'clock in the morning. Holy shit! Look what I figured out. Look at this. Isn't this great? And it's like, the hell does this guy sleep?
I know.
And you know, the Red Bull fridge over my shoulder, right there. That should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, you texted me at 6 o'clock this morning, before 6, and my wife said to me, "Oh, I can't imagine how many cans of Red Bull have been consumed overnight for Nick to be texting you before 6 in the morning." Yeah, right.
All of them.
I said,
all of them.
I'm sure when I get on the phone and call him, he'll be in his car on his way to get yet another, not case, but pallet of Red Bull.
If I could fit a pallet of Red Bull in my tiny little go-kart that masquerades as a car, which is great in the snow, by the way. I highly recommend anybody that lives in like a snowy area, Michigan, Pennsylvania, whatever, 2-wheel drive, damn near Formula One slicks on your car, rear-wheel drive. It's great. Nothing's going to go wrong. But in all seriousness, the one thing I will conclude with, Doc, is this, and I don't think I've done this. I'm coming up on 9 years of doing this. I've gone from salt and pepper to pepper has left building. And actually, on the subject, Doc, I don't normally throw anybody under the bus on this show, but I'm going to have to throw Jana under the bus here for a second, because
I don't know if you want to do that.
Because she walks by yesterday. I happen to have one of the editing windows open, and she goes, Dave's got a couple of grays coming in.
Oh, I got a lot of grays. Yeah.
I went, really? I mean, she bombards me, right? And as she says it, right, I just kind of look up and there's this one white hair, just like, you know, it looks like she's on a Van der Graaf generator just sticking up. And I went,
don't do that.
I said, what's that?
Oh.
What's that?
No. Did she talk to you?
You were right, Doc. Don't do that. I did the research, so you don't have to. No. And I did remind her that she's not going gray. She's going like her grandmother was. GE Soft White. It's a shade of white that only exists in that family. It's almost outside the visible spectrum. So I covered for you, Doc. I got you, man. Not to worry. But in addition to throwing somebody under the bus here,
it's one of the bravest things you've ever done, I think.
Yeah, I believe the term is ballsy, stupid, but ballsy. But the reality is, I'm going to do something I've never done in 9 years on this show that we've been doing this, and that is I'm going to do a little self-promotion.
Oh,
which
good.
is
Yeah.
I'm
Go,
going to
yeah.
invite.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I spoke earlier about a project that a very good friend of mine and I worked on together, who I adore working with, who is just, and I mean, we all have them. Every once in a while, you just get somebody you work with them, and you're like, God, this is a dream. So I have a really good friend of mine I've worked with for several years now on a number of different projects, and we just fired one of the, let me rephrase that. We were told we sucked, which was cool. By this one particular project, I was like, well, crap, like now we don't have anything to work on together. I mean, I have a bunch of stuff that I'm working on, but I'm going to cordially invite, and this is kind of ad hoc and impromptu, Operation Freedom listeners and subscribers. You have a business. You're interested in AI. You're interested in custom systems. You're interested in custom technology. You're interested in hosting that doesn't require you have to mortgage a kidney.
Yeah.
We're selective about who we're going to do that with, but we're going to extend the invite all the same to Operation Freedom listeners and subscribers only. Okay. If you have a business and you're looking to upgrade anything, I don't care if it's the website, I don't care if it's a web app, if you want to automate things, if you want to kind of start to catch up because you have either competitors or you've heard about, people using AI for this, that, or the other thing, and you're like, holy crap, I'm still doing this the manual way, whatever it is, especially now with the systems that are available. And again, if I spin this camera around, there's a wall of hardware there, right?
Sure.
So we have some availability on it. It normally doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
We are a lot less expensive and we're a lot easier to work with than Azure, than AWS, than GCP.
And I can vouch for that, by the way.
The reason DaveJanda.com is up 99.99949% of the time is that.
Not an over.
So
Very true.
And the other thing I'll leave folks with is this, and I'm all for making a buck. I'm all for capitalism, but some of the ethical things that I've seen recently. And so a lot of these AI platforms, and I'll leave everybody with this, which is if you use a free platform for something and you can't figure out what the product is, look in the mirror.
Yeah,
you're the product.
Yeah, right.
Right? You and your data and so a lot of these systems that are setting up now where people are connecting them, either they're trying to manage their leads, their customers or whatever. All of a sudden, I happen to know a realtor around here that started, he started using a number of very common, I'm not going to mention which ones they are, very common AI platforms and very common automation platforms. And all of a sudden, this guy's been in business for quite some time. His leads start getting called by his competitors, and he's going, what the shit is this? Right? So it took me, and I helped him out. I looked into it. I went, that platform that you used, they have a data broker on the other end of that that's taking your stuff, packing it up, yeeting it off to Dun & Bradstreet or InfoLock or NameLock or whoever that might be. And now it's in a lead pool where they can be bought commercially. Why? Because when you check the box,
right,
you gave it to him, right? You don't get to bitch and complain about that. And he was like, oh shit, I've never even thought of that. A lot of these free AI platforms, you got to figure if it's free and they're running these systems like here that are not cheap.
Right. No.
They got to be making money somewhere because they're not a freaking charity.
That's right.
That's where they're making the money. And it's the gift that keeps on giving, because as an example, if you connect it to a CRM, right, they have all of that data all the time. They keep updating their data set. They keep selling it over and over and over again. We don't do that here. No. We're the old school data center. It's yours. We don't have to do that. We don't have their overhead, and we also don't have that scumbaggy greed. Let's call it that, right? So I will again, if you have a business, and I normally don't do this, but this is really more because I want to work with a very good friend of mine. It's time.
What's the best way
to get in
touch with you?
Info at evolutionconsulting.world. I will put a link down in the description of this or whatever. And that is for Operation Freedom listeners and subscribers only. Okay.
That's
Just
great.
Drop us an email. Say hi.
Yet another benefit. And I can attest to the power of what you guys do and how you do it.
Yeah. Because we enjoy it. And if you work with folks that enjoy what they do, you're
also really good at
it. We try, man. We try to make it look easy.
No, you're very, very good at it. And I thank you. I thank you, Nick, for everything you have done, are doing, and will do. I thank you folks for joining us. Until next time, Dave Janda signing off. Dream big and dare to fail. Thanks for your time today.